So hello everyone, my name is Ben. I broke my foot last week and that's one of the last things that AI cannot fix. So I'll be limping tonight. Cool, so I'm one of the co-founders of Maki. Thank you so much, Swati and Law, for paving the way because we're literally gonna extend what you've been talking about. Today we're gonna talk about exactly why voice AI is not a product, but it has to be a system in order to work at scale, right? Before we jump into it, just a couple of words about what we do at Maki. So basically, we provide companies and some of the largest companies in the world with an end-to-end agentic orchestration platform, meaning that we run their hiring process from end to end. So we've got a series of agents that are connected and that take part in each of the very important steps within the hiring process, right? So screening, assessment, interviewing, up until the offer. So today I'm going to show you what we do in screening. Before I show you what's under the hood, maybe I can literally show you what's the product. Before I do that, so I was in the taxi ride coming here. That wants to work. So I had prepared a couple of slides, right? And then I stumble on LinkedIn on this guy, and what I had prepared is literally what he said. So if you want a summary of what I'm about to tell you, this LinkedIn post pretty much summarizes everything. So let's jump into the demo effect. This is Echo, Mike. We never know what's going to happen. But if you want, I'll give you the link and you can test afterwards. So this is literally what some of our customers experience. So basically, candidates apply, and immediately after applying, they can talk to one of our agents, right? 24/7, 7 days out of week. And the great news is that our agents, they work pretty much all the time, right? So at 11, if you want to talk to someone, that's doable. Also, they have unlimited patience, so you can be, a really, really, really dumb mother, and still the agent will be super nice to you. So that's the beauty of that system. Let's give it a try. So this is literally what we're using today to recruit some of our software engineers. Let's just change this, and let's go. Yes, we are AI EU compliant, so of course I'm gonna accept. We want to make sure that everything is working properly. And then we'll give candidates a couple of guidelines because, interacting with an AI, as some of you have mentioned tonight, is not necessarily the most comfortable experience. So we want to make sure that, they feel well, comfortable. And once that's ready, let's give it a try.
Hi, this is Callie calling from Maki People. Am I speaking with Ben Chino?
Yes, this is me.
Sorry. Thanks for taking the call. I'm reaching out from Maki People about the software engineer intern AI role. Do you have about 15 minutes right now for a quick screening chat?
I have about 12 minutes. Is that okay?
That's perfectly fine. We can cover the key points in 12 minutes. Okay, moving on, I'd like to start with a few administrative questions. When is your earliest start date?
I'm pretty free right now, so I could start next week.
Got it. It sounds like you're available to start right away. All right, moving on. Are you authorized to work in France?
Yes, I am a French citizen.
Understood. Next, are you able to come to the office 3 times a week?
I'd rather do 2 times a week. Is that okay?
Got it. That works for me. Now I'd like to ask why you're interested in joining Maki People.
Because obviously you're building a great AI in the voice industry, and I heard the management is pretty sick.
Okay, you're interested in our AI work and the management style. All right, moving on to the next part of today's call, I'd like to briefly talk about your experience with a technical project you've worked on. Could you tell me about a specific project where you built an AI feature or worked with an agent system?
Sure. So I literally built a autonomous interviewer using voice AI and a combination of speech to text, LLM, text to speech, which is pretty cool, and it's used by hundreds of organizations across the world. It's assessed dozens of millions of candidates, so that was pretty cool.
Got it. You built an autonomous interviewer using voice AI, speech to text, LLMs, and some other tech. That sounds like relevant experience for this role. Now I'd like to ask a bit more about that project. What specific challenges did you face when integrating the speech recognition with the language model?
Kelly, I don't mean to be rude, but I'm actually doing something pretty cool and cooler than this interview. So do you mind if we reschedule this interview for later today?
I understand you'd like to reschedule. However, I'm an AI assistant conducting a live screening, and this interview cannot be paused or rescheduled for another time today. If we stop now, your application will be submitted with only the information collected so far, which may affect how it is evaluated. Do you want to end the interview now, or would you prefer to continue and finish these questions? Please confirm with a yes or no.
I'm gonna end now because otherwise I'll miss my slot to speak about what we do under the hood. So thank you, Kelly.
Understood, Ben. I'm sorry to cut it short, but since you've confirmed you want to end the interview now, we will submit your application with the information we've gathered so far. Thank you for...
So this is very rude. I mean, Damien, who programmed this one, actually made sure that you could not pause. In the vast majority of the screenings that we conduct, you can actually pause and resume later. So Damien here was pretty harsh with his candidates. So this is literally being used by hundreds of organizations across the world. We work with the likes of BNP Paribas, Capgemini, PwC, Ernst & Young, and so on. I'm sorry about the weirdness that happened. This is on 11 labs, so we'll make sure to file a ticket on them. But as you can see, it's pretty convenient, especially for large organizations that want to recruit, what we call high volume jobs. So the reality of our businesses is that they have, I'll give you an example, right? BNP Paribas, they have 800,000 applications just for France in the course of 12 months. Prior to using Maki, they were only answering 30,000 people, right? So you've got like 90% of people that apply. And by the way, it was boring forms. Huh? So you take 15 minutes to actually fill out like first name, last name, etc. So it's really like a pain in the ass. And they would never hear back again from the company. This is like horrible experience, right? Here, in just a couple of seconds, and again, remember that our agents work 24/7, right? In just a couple of seconds, you go back to work, you're a recruiter at BNP Paribas in the morning, you've got dozens of candidates that have been vetted throughout the night, so you can see literally their scores. And so what we do after that is we'll use all the call insights, so the transcript and everything, to extract the interesting pieces for us, right? So that's gonna be like the eligibility criteria. I have the profile that matches the requirements for the role? But most importantly, and this is where science kicks in, we'll actually assess for skills, right? And so this is where we literally use parts of the transcription to infer, is this person good with this or that skill? And this is very, very complicated to do. So I'll show you how we do that. But imagine the gain of time for companies that do that at scale, right? This is like tremendous. So that is a pretty cool example of what we can do using voice AI. All right. So, like I said, what he said, right? AI is hard. I mean, you've all seen that last week, right? Imagine that happens during a conversation, like you're literally saying something and all of a sudden the AI starts talking about something else. We don't want that to happen. I can guarantee you, we work with Delta Airlines. I can guarantee you that if that happens, they ship me in the US and they send me to jail immediately, and I don't want to go to jail. So we have to be extra careful about what we do. And again, if you work in voice AI, not all conversations have the same weight. So if you order a burrito and something goes wrong, so what? But if you're applying for a job and that can literally change the course of your life, it matters what happens during that conversation, right? So we have this tension that we're constantly fighting with, which is we can provide a lot of control to the experience and make sure that everything is going to go well. But if we do so, then we do so without the naturalness. So if you want to have a very natural experience, super low latency, super fluid conversation, et cetera, you're going to lose on control. And so we have to constantly battle those two concepts. And this is what we're doing with Mochi. So I'll explain to you how we manage to find some balance between those two forces. So the first point is that most voice AI products fail precisely because they don't try and address that problem of control versus naturalness, right? There are a lot of voice AI platforms that you can use today. It's out of the box. You just drag and drop a couple of components and it works. The reality is that it won't work, or it will work for a 2 minutes conversation, as what he mentioned, right? But if you are having a 20-minute conversation where you go super deep on technical skills, it's going to break for sure. So the problem is that when it breaks, there's nothing you can do about it because it's out of the box, right? And so you can't understand why it failed, and there's no way that you can actually fix it. So you have to file a ticket and wait, which is what we're going to do with 11 labs right after this call. And also, it requires for candidates to behave the way they were supposed to behave. And as Swati mentioned, they never behave the way they behave, right? You ask them a question, and they literally talk about something else. And that's the reality of hiring. That's the reality of interviewing. And this is something that we need to cope with. So again, that tension between naturalness and control. If you want control, the answer has nothing to do with what you just asked. Control will be, I don't care, I'm just repeating the question, right? You could acknowledge what the person is saying and so on. And this is naturalness. So again, we have that tension between the two. And then last point, I went super fast on this, right? But you saw the extraction that we do with our interviews, right? Where we infer the skills of people. And under a lot of different regulations like GDPR, AIEU Act, et cetera, it's very dangerous to do that. So if you do that, you need to be prepared to actually answer the question, why did you rate that person the way you rated them, right? And so again, there's no way you can do that with just a simple prompt out of a voice AI platform. So you need to have a system under that. So that basically summarizes everything, right? It's very easy to ship a perfect demo. So that's the 90%. But the true reality, especially if you want to work with customers and large customers, is the 10% remaining. And that's literally going to be like 99% of the actual work that needs to happen. All right. So what's the recipe behind at least what we did and our conception of that world? We believe that voice AI is not a product, at least in the context that I've given. It is a system. And so for that system to work, you need to have a lot of different components orchestrated, just like a pipeline, if you will, right? So we have several components, speech to text. We have meaning and intent, which is basically an LLM layer. Under that LLM layer, we actually have an orchestration system, which is really like the core of what we do at Maki. And then there's the extraction and then the text-to-speech. If I go very fast on those, speech to text, obviously you want something that is very, very robust because this is where a lot of things can break. We're not inventing our own models, right? So we work with the best models like DeepGram, 11 Labs, and so on. But you still need to adjust for those, right? You can't just take them for granted. So for instance, VAD or turn detection, right? Most of the time, it's not going to work correctly. And actually, Victor, who's sitting over there, built our own turn detection. So when we should speak, when we should let the candidate speak. And by the way, there will be some candidates that want to be interrupted, and there will be candidates that like need 10, 15 seconds of calm before they answer, right? So how do you infer that dynamically? Very complicated. And by the way, I'm pretty happy because the echo did not have a meaningful impact on the demo, which means that we did our job well. Then there's the turning words into meaning, right? So what do I actually understand from what the candidate is saying, and how can I use that to steer the conversation? And so this is where the third part is actually very important. Our job at Maki is not being a receptionist and just handling a call like I need to book a ticket. Our job is to go from A and not to B, to A to Z with all the different letters, because most of the screenings that we have, they're going to be like 10 administrative questions, 27 skill-based questions, and so on. So it's very complicated to do that. And so the way we do that is not through a single prompt orchestration, because that would break, right? If you believe that you can handle that context with just a single prompt, it's not going to work. And so what we do is we have what we call a finite state machine, which is like this huge graph of nodes. And each node is a bunch of prompts that allow us to steer the conversation. And so what I mean by that is basically we choose what to do next. From literally every sentence, there are a couple of agents that say, we believe that we should go to the next stage. We believe that we should probe. We believe that we should ask a follow-up question because we only got a partial answer to what we were expecting, and so on. And that is the true recipe to actually making a system work. It's going to be very complicated. I mean, I've literally like doubled the number of gray hair that I have working on that, but this is the recipe to success. So this is what it looks like in practice, right? I could go into the back office if you're interested, but basically we have all those nodes. Every single question is just a bunch of prompts deciding what we need to ask, how we need to ask it, when we determine that we can go next, and so on. So it's literally like super, super detailed engineering. This I can go very quickly, but also we never do things on the spot, right? The end goal of voice AI is just to converse, but any decision making shouldn't happen on the spot. There are so many things that could go wrong with this approach. just think about the quality of speech-to-text models, right? If you do that real-time streaming, it's not going to work. You're going to miss one word out of two. It's enough to steer a conversation because you can still infer the context. But again, if you're rating people, you need to do that ad hoc. You need to do that after the conversation. And so again, we extract evidence post-conversation in order to evaluate people. And text-to-speech, that's the easy part, even though 11 Labs still have some hallucination. I don't know if I mentioned, so I'm going to file a ticket. And last, evaluation is at the core of the entire system. Because it is so complex and because the impact can be so tremendous, we have to evaluate. And by evaluation, we mean simulation. So prior to a call actually going to a candidate, we run hundreds and thousands of synthetic calls where we mimic like the most edgy edge case that can happen, right? So instead of answering the questions, we have this LLM candidates that just ordered pizza. So you're like, can you work in France? I would like a margarita. Okay, but can you work in France? I would still like a margarita. And we do that like for 10 minutes just to ensure that the model is actually doing its job and that it's not ordering a pizza, because who knows, right? This is not what we're supposed to do. So evaluation is, it's not just there to be there. It's literally a feature within the product. And these are just screenshots of what we do in evaluation. So at the end of the day, I think the core concept is voice AI is super hard. It's fucking hard. But if you want to do it well, if you want to do it with customers, if you want to do it in a way that can impact the lives of people, you have to do it well, and you have to over-engineer, because there's no other way. There's no shortcut. So I'm sorry if I broke some dreams, but we found out the hard way. We spent pretty much 12 months getting to the point where we are today, and there's still so much work left to do. But yeah, this is what needs to be done.